G'day everyone, it's Annette here and welcome to my channel Alchemy Art. Today I'll show you how to make some gorgeous pearlescent looking coasters. To do so I'll be using moulds and shapes 4-cavity geode coaster mould, and the resin I'm using today is Just Resin Art Coat. In all coasters I'll be using 120 ml of the mixed resin divided into 5 little cups. There will be 40 ml in one, 30 in another, and those two will be transparent colours, 2 lots of 20 ml for 2 opaque colours, and 10 ml of resin on its own. I've already mixed up 3 lots of the colours for 3 coasters, and they're all mixed pretty similar, but one will have this pigment paste in it, and I wanted to show you that I'm using the bare minimum to get this transparent colour. So I stir the paste and then I wipe off nearly every scrap of colour, and it's the bare minimum left on the stick. That's how transparent I wanted it. I'm looking to see how the transparent colours react with the pigment powders. I believe the pigment powders are heavier than the transparents, and when they sink through they create interesting effects in resin as it cures. In all coasters I'm using a Pantone Tria alcohol based ink by Letraset, and I use 12 drops of each colour. The left hand side coasters will have a pigment powder in pearlescent silver white and a pigment powder in glitter gold, and I use about half a teaspoon of each powder. And the right hand side coasters I use a royal gold pigment powder and a pearl white pigment powder, again about half a teaspoon of each. When you use a pigment powder in resin you need to mix it a bit extra. It has a tendency to float back up to the surface if it's not well incorporated, and even before I pour the actual puddles into the cavities in the mould, I mix it again just in case. The pigment powders in gold and the whites, they are my opaque colours, so once I've mixed them in I lift up the stick and see if I can still see it through the mixed colour. If by chance I could still see it, I would add some more pigment powder and just remix it until it was fully opaque. The last 2 colours that I used were alcohol inks, one by Ranger and one by Pinata. I will say what I'm using for each coaster as I'm pouring them, but I'll also list it down below in the description box for you. When I do use the inks though, I used 10 drops of each. Okie dokie, now all my colours are mixed up, it's time to get pouring. I'm starting with a transparent colour in each coaster, which is the 40 ml of resin mixed with a transparent colour. In the coaster that I'm using here, I'm using Pinata Purple Passion Alcohol Ink, and I'm trying to get the resin to go over the entire base of the mould as well as touch the sides. I'm hoping by doing this that I don't lose all of the original transparent colour. As you pour in more colours in a puddle pour into the centre, it pushes the colours out towards the edge. So hopefully by having it all the way up to the edge to begin with, I should still be able to see a little bit of it. Well, that's the plan anyway. Next I puddle pour in some ArtiSue Royal Gold, which is a pigment powder and it is opaque. I only use half the gold. This is followed by ArtiSue Pearl White. Again, I only use half of the white. The next colour going in is another transparent. It's a Pantone Tria ink in purple. It's looking quite pink though on top of the white pearlescent. I'm basically using the gold and white to separate the 2 transparent colours really, and there's a dark and a light of each transparent. Following the Tria ink, I put in the last of the white pigment powder, and it's at this stage I realise I've actually still got a bit of the Pinata purple mix left over, and I decide to add that too. And then I add the last of the royal gold pigment powder, and finally pour in the 10 ml of clear resin on its own. And as you can see, the colours are getting pushed out towards the sides. But as this cures, the colours will pull back in towards the centre. So I'm going to show you a bit closer that you can see right through to the coaster where I've just put in the clear. But at the end of the video, when I demould, you'll see there's hardly any of the clear left whatsoever. On to the second coaster now, which is in shades of green, and the first transparent colour I'm using is Pantone Tria Ink in green, which is the 40 mils of resin again. And as you'll see, I forget to stretch this out or poke it out with my popsicle stick to the edges, but as I'm realising this, I'm also hoping that the puddle pores of the different colours will help push that out anyway. So in goes half of my royal gold pigment powder, and then it's half of my pearl white pigment powder. The pale green that you see next being poured in on top of the white is Ranger Alcohol Ink in Mermaid. It looks sort of lime green in this video, but it was more towards a turquoise colour in reality. I think it's more that there's the white pearlescent behind it, followed by the gold. And I use all of that. That's the 30 mils of resin with the transparent. Then I pour in the remaining of the white pigment powder. Apologies again for my hand in the way because I'm trying to pour from up high so the colours will mingle. And I didn't aim too well in that one, did I? Then it's the remainder of my gold pigment powder in the resin. And then lastly, I pour in the 10 mils of the clear on its own. And as you can see, it's pushing the colours out towards the edges again. It's pretty amazing the effects you can get with resin and the different products that you can mix in it and how they interact with each other. When you're using silicone moulds and you're pouring your resin in, it's not advisable to use a flame on the surface to pop your bubbles. You'll run the risk of overheating the resin and fusing it to the silicone. So for this two here, I've decided to just use some Isopropyl Alcohol and give it a quick spritz. It breaks up the surface tension on the top of the resin and allows the bubbles to pop. Now on to my third coaster, and the first colour going down is the Tria Pantone Ink in turquoise. I obviously can't lift this up to move the resin to the edges, so I use my craft heat gun on a low setting and just aim it into the centre of the resin puddle, and then I use my popsicle stick and gently push the resin out to the edge of the mould. In this particular coaster, I'm going to use two Pantone inks to see how they work with the pearlescent white and the gold colours. The next colour I'm pouring in is ArtiSue, and it is a glitter gold pigment powder. As I said previously, the opaques are 20 mils to start with, so when I'm saying I'm pouring in half, of course I'm pouring in about 10 mils of each opaque. The pearlescent white I'm using on this side of the coaster mould is A1 Pigments Australia, and it's a silver white pearl, and I'm pouring in half of that on top of my gold. Again, pouring from up high, so excuse my hand, I'm sorry about that. The next transparent colour is a Tria Pantone Ink in a blue. It's a beautiful rich colour. I maybe should have put the darker colour first, but anyway, the turquoise went in first. Once again, the colours are getting pushed out towards the edges as I add each puddle. And once this blue is down, it's back to adding the remainder of the pearlescent silver white pigment powder, and then the glitter gold pigment powder, and lastly followed by the little puddle of the clear resin on its own. Now it's on to coaster number 4, our last coaster, and the first transparent colour going down is Colour Obsession Pigment Paste in Sapphire Blue. And I again use my popsicle stick and a little bit of heat from the heat gun to manoeuvre this colour out and touch all the edges of the mould. Even though it's a heat gun and not a flame, I try and move continuously over the surface and not leave it in one spot to avoid that fusing that can happen. Moulds are expensive and I don't want to waste a mould by accidentally fusing my resin against it. It's nearly impossible to use it again after that. You try and pull it off and it'll pull away a chunk of the silicone. Then it's on to using about 10 mils or half of my glitter gold pigment powder. And it's about here that I almost hit a disaster, and I've picked up the transparent next, but thankfully I realise just before I'm about to pour and put it aside, and yes, it's meant to be a half of the silver white pearlescent pigment powder on top of the gold before the next transparent. This last transparent colour that goes on top of the white is another Pantone Tria ink. It's saying it's red on the bottle. It's looking quite orange in this pour. I think it's more that it's against the pearlescent white and gold underneath. I'm just hoping that if it is more towards an orange, it doesn't mingle with the blue and make brown. Anyway, in goes the last of the pearlescent silver white. And following that is the last of the sparkle gold pigment powder, and of course the final little bit is the clear 10 mils of resin on its own as the very last bit. Lastly, I use the heat gun again on a low setting and move it quickly over all 4 coasters to pop any of the bubbles that are now on the surface. It's been maybe about 40 minutes since I've initially mixed the Just Resin art coat. It has a pot life or a working time of approximately an hour from when you first combine it or mix it together. So as it's getting closer to the hour, it'll start to get thicker, and it does heat up a little bit, but not too badly. But what I wanted to show you was that the first 2 that I've poured, you can now see that the colours are now pulling back from the sides or the edges and in towards the centre. And that clear little puddle that you could see the silicone mould through is now getting smaller. This will continue to happen as the resin cures, and it should end up that clear circle in the centre is nearly gone by the time I demould it tomorrow morning. It's the next day now and it's time to demould. I'm going to start with the coaster that I used the 2 Tria inks in, the blue and the turquoise. And I'm quite eager to see how this has gone. So turning it over, oh my gosh, it is actually beautiful. It's very shimmery, almost like it's glowing. Next is the dark blue, which had the pigment paste and the supposedly red Pantone Tria ink in it, and I'm hoping it isn't brown. I can see a gold shimmer in there, so let's turn it over and check it out. Oh, it's gorgeous as well. Very pearlescent. Looks like pearlescent raindrops. And then it's on to the third one, which was the Pinata Passion Purple and the Purple Tria ink. And it's got some beautiful gold feathering on the side of this. I don't know, I might have poured the initial transparent colour a bit unevenly. Oh my goodness, it looks like this one is glowing. That is my favourite so far. Lastly, it's the coaster with the 2 greens in it, the Tria green and the Ranger Alcohol Ink in Mermaid. And as you can see in all of them, the clear is nearly completely gone. It's gorgeous too. Wow. I'm really happy with these. They turned out quite beautiful, and it just amazes me what the effects you can get with resin. So thank you everybody for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing, and please share my channel with anyone who might be interested. If you have any comments or suggestions, please put them down below and I will definitely get back to you. So have a great day everybody, and thank you again.